This is going to be a quick video on how to use the debugger inside of Google Chrome. And so the reason you want to use this is that the debugger lets you see exactly what's happening in every single line of your code. So this is most obviously useful when you're debugging, which means like you wrote a program and it's not doing what you expect it to do. So then you want to go through line by line and actually see what's going on. So it's useful for debugging, but it's also really useful for learning how code works. So you're reading a function and you're kind of confused about a certain line and you want to see how it works. And in that case, a debugger is also really good to use because you can just see what's happening. So that's why I want to show you how to use it. And whether you're reading code that someone else wrote or you're going through a book or something, it's going to be really helpful. And I end up using the debugger pretty much every single day, multiple times a day. So it's going to be really, really important to know. So I'm on Chrome right now, and you can be on any website. It doesn't matter. And from the menu, you want to hit View, and then you want to open the developer section, and then from there you want to hit JavaScript console, and then you will get this bottom window come up. I'm just gonna make it a little bigger, and I'm going to type a function, and this function is just here to illustrate how this works. So there's no really importance to anything that I'm typing here. It's going to be called log numbers, I'm just going to call it increment number because that's what's actually happening. And I'm going to have a current number, and it's going to be 0. And then one thing I should say is that when you're typing a multi-line function, or you want to type multiple lines of code, you need to use Shift-Enter. If you don't use Shift-Enter, your code will just run, and it won't have all the stuff that you expect. So each time I'm adding a new line, I'm doing Shift-Enter. Okay, so I'm going to Shift-Enter again, and I'm going to have a for loop. There's going to be var equals I, or var I equals 0, and we're going to keep going as long as I is less than 3, and then we're going to increment I each time in the loop. Then I'm going to do Shift-Enter, and the body of this for loop is going to be really simple. We're just going to take current number and then increment it by 1, and that's it. So if we run this now, our console knows about increment number, and we can actually use it, and we'll see that nothing really happens. But if we want to kind of see exactly what is happening in this function, for example, we can use the debugger. So that's how we're going to use it. So hit this button to clear the console, and then if you hit the up arrow, you'll get the last thing you typed. And we want the thing we typed before this was when we defined the function, and Shift-Enter, and then just add one line, debugger, and then hit enter. So what's going to happen now is the next time the console runs this code, it's going to stop here whenever it sees the debugger statement. So if we run increment number again, we're going to get a different experience. So we see this, we're in the sources tab first of all, and then it says pause in debugger, and you see it's highlighted at line 3 because that's where it's paused. And then on the right side, you'll see really useful information about different variables that are relevant to our function. And in particular, our variable kind of works with, or our function works with two variables, the current number and I inside of the for loop. So you can see those are registered already, and they're undefined now because we haven't run the code that actually sets them to any value yet, because we're in line 3. And then in line 4, it's actually current number actually gets set, and then I doesn't really get set until line 5. So now we're paused, and so how do we keep on going and see how the code actually works? We want to use this button on the right, step over next function call. So if we hit that, we go to the next line, and then you can see that current number is still undefined, which might be weird. That's because when you're highlighting a line, you're at the beginning of the line and it hasn't run yet. So when you go to the next line, now current number is initialized. Now it's 0. So now we're in the for loop, and you can see that I is going to be 0 after we go through that line, and it is, I is 0. And if we just keep on going, you'll see how the for loop actually works. So current number is going to be incremented by 1, and it is. And then we go into the loop again. I is 1 now. And then you go down, current number is incremented by 1, so it becomes 2. And then I is going to be increased by 1, so it'll be 2. And then current number is increased by 1, so it's going to be 3. And then now you have the scenario where the loop is going to end, because this line is going to increase I by 1, and so I is 3 now, but 3 is not less than 3, so at this point we're going to exit the for loop, and you'll see that happen here, where we go to the end of the function. That's pretty much how the debugger works, and in this example, you can already see how it's kind of useful, especially if you're new to programming. All this information is really good to see, but when you get more advanced, it's going to be really, really important, because functions can get really complicated, and it can be really difficult to know what's actually happening, and that's where the debugger is going to come into play. When you're unsure about something, or something's not working like you expect it to, you can actually just run the debugger and see exactly how it works. So that's why you want to know how to run the debugger. So there's one more thing I wanted to mention inside of the debugger, is that when we were stepping through the function in the example, we used the step over next function call, which is right here. But there's also this button here, which is step into next function call. So just to clarify, this is step over next function call. This is step into next function call. And what that means is, here we didn't have any function calls, but say that you had, say that our code was a little bit different. So I'm going to go to the console, and I'm up arrow twice, and say that instead of just going straight into this for loop, we added a line here, and it called a function that we made up. And this function doesn't really, let's just say this function doesn't really do anything, but if we went in and we clicked step into function call on that line, what would happen is we would go into the body of this function that we made up. Whereas if we instead do step over next function call like we were doing before, we kind of just do whatever this function does, but we don't go into it. So we just kind of go to the next line. If this happens to change anything, we'll see those effects, but we're not going to step into that function call. So I just wanted to make that distinction, and you're inevitably going to see code that does call other functions. So when you get that chance, definitely hit step over and step into, and get a feel on your own for how that's different.